Welcome back into Spotlight. This is your UFC 326 Super Preview. Yes, we have Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira as the main event with the BMF belt, but we asked our Brian Campbell for his top 5 storylines heading into this one because the entire card is stacked. So you see there, number 5, let's welcome in BC here, who doesn't appreciate yet that I call him our BMF, but you are, Brian. You are, so just accept it, okay? It's going to be your nickname. Let's start with your number 5 storyline. It has to do with the third fight on the main card, bantamweight bout. And the big spotlight here, 21-year-old Raul Rojas Jr., 21 years old, as I said. He was the youngest fighter that UFC ever signed when he was 17. What is your storyline surrounding this fight?
That this is the biggest fight of his career against Rob Font, a ranked bantamweight, and the true make-or-break step-up moment early on. Look, we've seen a lot of great stuff out of Rojas since he's come to the UFC, obviously particularly on the ground where his decorated wrestling campaign has been the foundation of what he can do. He bounced back beautifully from a decision loss to Christian Rodriguez early on and has recorded 4 straight victories, 2 of them by stoppage. But it's stepping up to this level against Rob Font, the 38-year-old from outside of Boston, who we know as having some of the most stubborn and ruthless boxing in this division behind that vaunted jab. This is where we're going to find out whether Raul Rojas is just a great story of a teenager who's come on the scene with the floppy hair and the chee-wee-wees catchphrase. Did I cringe you out with that at all? I don't know, but nothing cringe about this man's fighting style. But is he ready for the top, the rankings, and the eventual title level? We're going to find that out against Rob Font. Because remember, the vaunted UFC record for youngest champion remains John Jones, the former light heavyweight king, who did so at 23 years and 8 months. Rojas is 21 years and 5 months at this moment. So a victory over Rob Font would get him in the rankings and would certainly put him on a potential path in a deep and dangerous division at bantamweight to have a shot at equaling or eclipsing that record. So a lot to watch for in Rojas, who is rising at the moment.
BC, you're a father of a teenager. Everything you do is cringy, right?
I'm a human meme. That's exactly what it is. You know?
But it also hardens you to it, you know? Like, then you can say everything you do is cool, so you're fine here. Your number 4 storyline, it actually has to do with the co-main event here, and this is where it gets hard for me. It is a redemption story coming off their last fights for both of these fighters who are also ranked in the top 8 in the middleweight division. I love redemption stories. It is very hard for me to pick sides in this. So you give us a storyline, and fans can pick who they're cheering for.
Sure, this is a heck of a matchup, of course, with Brazilian Caio Borralho against Reinier de Ridder, the Dutch Knight. Both were on big-time winning streaks late last year and looking like they could potentially cut the line toward a title shot with a breakthrough victory. Unfortunately for both, in quasi-number-1 contender fights, each one came up empty. Now, the good news for Caio Borralho out of the Fighting Nerds gym is that he fought pretty competitive and pretty well against top contender Nasruddin Imavov in a decision loss. But on the flip side, RDR, who had won his first 4 UFC fights in less than a year's time, he collapsed, quite literally, against late replacement Brendan Allen, refusing to get off the stool after round 4, exhausted. Unfortunately, you did get a lot of critics calling him a quitter for how he fell apart in that performance. The redemption angle here is that both badly need a bounce-back win that, when you consider their recent runs before the loss, would very much put them right back in that title picture, while a loss, which would be 2 in a row, would certainly set them back, potentially outside of the rankings, with a much longer road to hoe. Look, de Ridder is in his mid-30s. It's go time for him. He's a former 2-division champion with 1 championship. He wanted to come in and make a big splash in the UFC. He did that by upsetting former champion Robert Whittaker, but now he must prove to those deep and dark critics that he didn't quit against Brendan Allen and that he can bounce back. This is a good one with so much at stake.
The Fighting Nerds, it's a great name, and I just realized it would be an elite Halloween costume, and I'm putting that in my back pocket. Okay, top 3 storylines, they all have to do with the main event because that's how important this one is. And your first one, this is more than just the BMF belt. Explain.
It really is. Look, this is such a great matchup for so many reasons, but one of those, besides the action potential and the combined historical elements of both fighters' resumes, is that we're still talking about a quasi number one contenders bout. Oliveira comes in as the number 3 ranked lightweight. Holloway comes in at number 4. The winner here would have a great opportunity moving forward. Maybe Holloway has more opportunities here, 2 years younger at 34. But if Max Holloway in particular scores a victory, it would not only be the second defense of his BMF title, we could be looking at him in the main event of the White House. There could be opportunities to defend that BMF title against anyone from Conor McGregor in a rematch to maybe taking on Justin Gaethje in a rematch this time for that interim lightweight title. What does Holloway really want? Of course, he wants a rematch with full champion Ilia Topuria, who's coming off of a long layoff due to some personal issues. Of course, we saw Holloway get knocked out in their featherweight title bout 2 fights ago, but Holloway was competitive up to the point of where the fight was stopped, and now in a new division with a bigger frame, sitting down on his power shots more, the 34-year-old Hawaiian legend wants to get a second crack right there at a second title in a second weight class. You add in that BMF title, yeah, we're talking about 2 of the greatest fighters of all time, Holloway and Oliveira. More at stake here than just that ceremonial belt.
There's potentially so many title fights that could be on that White House card. Okay, your second to top storyline, we'll call it your co-main storyline, if you will. This is a rematch between these 2 fighters, but it was 2015 when they first met. Holloway won that first match. It was kind of weird. And for you, that first fight, it exists, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you got to throw it out, not just because it was contested, by the way, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in a 5-round main event, but it came at a point early in their respective arcs where they just weren't the fighters that they ultimately became. That was the 4th straight win for Holloway in the midst of an absolutely epic 13-fight win streak that eventually led to him becoming the featherweight champion with back-to-back wins over Jose Aldo. But we didn't really learn anything because 99 seconds in, a freak injury to Oliveira, an esophageal tear, it was originally called a neck injury, forced him to retire from that fight. We didn't really get in that minute plus any sort of understanding how the styles contrast, and on top of that, the second half career turnaround that Do Bronx would make after moving up to lightweight redefined his career altogether. An 11-fight win streak. He became lightweight champion, and now we're talking about a fighter who, oh, by the way, has the record for the most bonuses in UFC history, the most submissions, the most finishes. He's closing in on number 2 for most wins, right? That fight from 11 years ago, throw it out. We're going to wipe the slate clean for Saturday.
Both of these fighters, I believe, in the top 4 in wins in the UFC. All right, your top storyline for UFC 326, your main event, that this could be the best BMF fight yet. Why do you think that is?
Sure, it's the 5th BMF title fight we've ever had. Of course, that ceremonial belt launched in 2019 as a one-off when Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal touched gloves in Madison Square Garden. Max Holloway, however, is the only fighter to ever defend that title. He did that against Dustin Poirier last summer in their trilogy, which was Poirier's retirement fight. But the reason why I think on paper and for the potential to deliver that this may be the best one we ever had is because the combined historical accomplishments of both are just simply through the roof. 2 former champions, both who have sort of outside claims of being the best fighter in their division's history. You add in the fact that Oliveira, as I just mentioned, owns all of those UFC records. Both are in the top 5 for most wins. It's all action personified. This is can't miss TV. It's a belt on the line, and I think it's the best we've ever seen in this really fun BMF series.
It's going to be electric come Saturday. There's so much more to talk about. Brian Campbell, hang on just a second because we have so much more to dive into. BC mentioned just the history of these 2 fighters, more than 80 fights combined. So what on earth do they look like stepping into the octagon come Saturday? We'll break that down. Welcome back in to Spotlight here, taking a look at the tail of the tape. We have history in the making when we get to Saturday night, UFC 326, between Max Holloway, who is the current BMF champ, going up against Charles Oliveira. We were talking about it during the commercial break. 82 fights between these two fighters. We do believe that is the most combined fights in UFC history for two guys stepping into the octagon. And this week, Max Holloway spoke to Daniel Cormier ahead of the event.
Talk to me about that, right? About the first fight. When people talk about the injury, Oliveira may allude to the injury. It almost seems like you go, it is what it is, right? Like that's your saying.
I mean, yeah, you know, you made the walk, you did what it is, we fight. I mean, if I broke my ankle in there or something, you're not gonna hear me complain about it. You know, that's the way the cookie crumble, and you know, I'm just glad that we get to get it back. You know, he's you know, me and him been the top of our divisions forever. I believe we both are in the pound for pound still. So there's a lot of, you know, this is a history fight. You know, this is one for the history books, and we get to go out there and, you know, March 7th, bring fireworks, and it's going to be super exciting.
Let's welcome back in Brian Campbell and Danny Brasco here. This is your super preview of UFC 326. Danny, I'm going to start with you because we heard him talking about it just then, that this is history in the making. And part of the reason these two guys haven't met, they were in different divisions for a while. I did look up 2015, if you're wondering, BC, your music guy, Uptown Funk was a top song. That was a very long time ago. Danny, in your opinion, did it feel like at some point that was cringy, Brian? We're not going to do that again, but I do appreciate it. Danny, did it feel like these two would meet again at some point?
It does kind of feel like destiny, because the injury did take away a potentially great fight when they were featherweights all the way back in the day. And BC talked about the esophageal tear that Oliveira experienced. He said on the way to the on the way to the hospital, in the ambulance after that fight, that he couldn't even feel anything on his left side. He thought he was paralyzed. After that fight, Oliveira had a rough run. He went 2-3 in his next 5 and was stopped in all 3. He got submitted twice and ground and pounded by UFC broadcaster Paul Felder, and then completely reinvented himself. Went on an 11-fight win streak and made himself a dangerous striker to the point where he knocked out Jared Gordon, Michael Chandler, and was competitive with Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje in bouts where he was able to strike with them. Oliveira understood, as good as his jiu-jitsu is, as dangerous as that grappling attack was, he needed a Muay Thai game behind it, because the threat of his grappling makes his striking so much more dangerous. And at this point, he's the most evolved version of himself. He showed that he's still got fight in him, despite that nasty knockout loss to Ilia Topuria. Bounced back with a beautiful, dominant win over Mateusz Gamrot. And here we are for a BMF legacy fight. Two of the baddest men to ever grace the cage. And really, it's going to be a sight to behold, because it feels like we're entering the end of an era here. Volkanovski's getting up there in age. Justin Gaethje up there. Dustin Poirier just retired. These are two of my favorite fighters of this era, and it's just going to be an absolute privilege to watch them get after it once more.
And you wonder, Danny, how much this fight could elevate itself on the list of the great lightweight all-action fights. A lot of them title fights that we have seen over the last decade, that these two are two of the aging warriors left still standing. But the idea that these two have been circling each other has really been a reality. They just sort of peaked in terms of their early peak at different times, with Holloway, of course, taking that weird win over Oliveira back in 2015 and elevating himself faster toward that featherweight title, where it did take Oliveira a little bit more longer to evolve. But the good news here is that they both still got it, both ranked in the top 4 at lightweight. Holloway at 34. Anytime he suffers a big-time loss, we want to start to wonder whether this is the beginning of the second half or the beginning of the end. The thing is, he just doesn't show us that. He doesn't suffer back-to-back defeats. He gets back in there, takes on the biggest names available, and keeps coming. And I think you can say certainly the same for Oliveira, who after his title reign ended at the hands of Islam Makhachev, there were some questions, there were some losses as well. But at age 36, Oliveira is still not only viable, not only dangerous, but what he did last summer in his home country of Brazil, taking on a ranked and rising Mateusz Gamrot and then dominating him en route to an early submission, really reset a lot of our mental timelines to the idea that, yes, Oliveira is the greatest finisher in this company's history. He's always going to be dangerous. But it's not just that. He's still a threat for this lightweight title. So these two could not be coming together at any more of a perfect time, in my opinion. And you talk about some of the bangers that we've gotten in the early UFC on Paramount history. Obviously, Justin Gaethje versus Paddy Pimblett in this division just over a month and a half ago was one of them. This could exceed that in terms of the excitement that we're expecting on Saturday. So this chair doesn't come with a seatbelt, but if it did, I'd be buckled in and ready for this, all right?
That Paddy Pimblett, look, like he was beat up after that, but that was a lot of fun for the first fight on Paramount+. Each of you are going to give a fighter. BC, I'm giving you Max Holloway. We've mentioned the age, we've mentioned the miles on these guys, but there's a reason, Brian, that he wants another shot at that title. We could potentially see him on the White House card. He is the favorite heading into this one. Kind of give us your fighter profile, if you will, of physically, mentally, what you think he's going to look like heading into Saturday.
Well, look, you know Holloway brings the exciting, fluid striking. You know, he calls himself the greatest boxer in the history of the UFC. In fact, he was screaming that out to the announce crew in the 5th round of that record-setting performance over Calvin Kattar on national television a few years back, where he just crushed the record for most significant strikes landed. It's the fluid boxing. It's obviously the stingy takedown defense, which allows him to stand on his feet. But it's the subtle things about Max Holloway that has allowed him not just to constantly reinvent himself, but to stay pound for pound elite for so long. His control of distance, his timing. I mean, for as much as we love the idea that this guy points to the center of the cage with 10 seconds to go in some of his biggest fights and says, let's just brawl it out to the end, right? That great sequence that produced the one-punch knockout of Justin Gaethje back at UFC 300. But you only survive those type of things if you also have great defense and a tight guard, and that's what Max Holloway brings to this. At 34, boy, does he still have it. He's reinvented himself as a lightweight, and I think he's the rightful betting favorite coming in, and still very much a threat to the title at 155.
And that's the reason these guys are able to do it still, even though they've had so many fights. You have to keep reinventing yourself. Okay, Mr. Brasco, you get Oliveira here, who's technically above Holloway in the rankings. He's 3rd. Max Holloway's 4th. He is tied for the 2nd most wins in UFC history. He is so dangerous. Kind of give us your preview or your profile of him this weekend.
You know what he's not tied for, Amanda? Most submissions in UFC history. He is the promotion's most dangerous grappler to ever walk to this cage, and that's where it all starts with him. The jiu-jitsu attack, the pressure. His front choke series is nasty. The anacondas, the Darce chokes, the guillotines. His back takes and those body triangles, lethal. Once he's backpacked you, the rear naked choke feels imminent. Now he's added a Muay Thai striking game that's truly evolved alongside that, and he's so good at creating chaos, at creating these wild scrambling exchanges where even if he's getting hurt and you think you've got the advantage, Oliveira is always live, whether he's on bottom from full guard, in the stand-up with his Muay Thai striking game, or just pouring it on you looking to hunt a choke from any position. This guy can finish with the best of them. And Oliveira is going to present some problems for Holloway. You know, Holloway was able to turn away that first takedown attempt 10 years back. Let's see what it looks like this time around with these guys at the peak of their game. I wonder if Holloway is going to have to answer any questions on the ground. We know he's got elite grappling defense, but we know Oliveira puts the best of them in the scariest and sketchiest of predicaments. I'm wondering if Oliveira can create a wild exchange like that and maybe pull off a great moment.
Oliveira, an 89% finish rate, 17 of his past 24. You're talking about the submissions have been wins by submissions. Okay, guys, we're going to get best bets later on, but this is a prediction. On the main event, Brian, I'll start with you. Give me a prediction, but I also need to know, do we get a point to the center of the octagon to throw down at some point?
The only question is whether that comes in the final 10 seconds or the first 10 seconds of the fight, which Oliveira has teased that he wants. Look, this is a great matchup. You're going to get fireworks early. You know that. The problem, in my opinion, for Oliveira is the later this fight goes, the more vulnerable he becomes. It takes a lot of energy to put forth the effort he does in constantly crowding, attacking, and pressuring you. And Max Holloway has proved in fights in this division against Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier that he's got some of these intangibles that give him the edge when these close action fights go to this point. It's the defense, it's the tight striking, it's the chin, it's the stamina. I'm going to take Max Holloway here Might be a surprise to some. I'm going to take him by stoppage. I think he gets Oliveira out of there in round 4. I think this becomes a back-and-forth fight, and it's just the fact that Max's striking is better than Oliveira's. It's more predictable, more consistent, and I think the fact that he can keep his back off the ground in these type of bouts is going to help Max do that. Look for fireworks, but look for Max with a big call-out after a win here.
And his striking is more powerful. At 155, Max Blessed Holloway has discovered some new pop on his punches. This is a guy at featherweight who relied on a heavy pressure style, kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts, just unmatched volume that overwhelmed his opponents. Now, later in his career, Holloway's reinvented his game. He fights on the outside a lot more, kicking, counterpunching, and using heavy counterpunches to back his opponents up, namely in that Dustin Poirier fight. Poirier was the one coming towards Holloway, and he hurt him bad in the second round, which was able to really reverse the fortunes of his last matchup with Poirier, where he lost, and Poirier was able to hurt him. Now Max is the one hurting his opponents first. He doesn't just require, or he doesn't just lean on that volume and pressure. He can let his opponents come to him, and I fear that Charles's aggressive style is going to walk right into that game plan. The bull will play into the Matador's game. I also like a Holloway stoppage.
That would be phenomenal. I realized during these segments that I'm basically Herb Dean or like Jason Herzog or something like that. So we've come to the end of the second round. Get ready for the third. We've got more coming up here because it's not just the main event. This entire card is electric. We're going to preview everything else you need to know coming up. Welcome back into Spotlight here on CBS Sports Network. Okay, so it's a little interesting for UFC 326 coming up this Saturday. Yes, per usual, if you have Paramount Plus, which I hope you do, if not, please get it right now. You can watch the entire thing on there from the prelims all the way to the end of the main card. However, on CBS, this is the first time CBS is doing this, starting at 8 o'clock, you can catch the end of the prelims heading into the main card, but you do have to turn it over to Paramount Plus to watch the end of that main card and, of course, the main event with the BMF belt on the line. Okay, we have talked a lot about the main event between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. Max Holloway, the defending BMF champion right now, but this is an absolutely stacked card riddled with storylines. We're going to dive into each of these fights and the top things you need to know about all of them. Let's start with the first fight we've got coming up. And Danny, I asked you during the commercial break if you were into like video games, nerd stuff. You're like a little bit of a nerd, like a 50% nerd, because these two guys, their nicknames are RoboCop and the Hulk, which first of all, you just have to appreciate that. Give us a preview of the first fight of the night.
Oh, this is an absolute banger. It's a rematch of a fight that happened a few years ago in which I cashed on Bruno Ferreira round 1 knockout, plus 800, one of the most memorable cashes of all time. And initially watching that fight, I thought I got lucky. Bruno Ferreira landed a nasty straight left hand down the middle that put Rodriguez down. But watching it back, it was set up so beautifully. The reason I thought I got lucky is because Rodriguez was winning the first round. I would say he's probably the better overall MMA fighter. He's the more technical boxer. He's the more proficient wrestler and grappler. But Ferreira is a wild man. He is a crazy swinger. He's a creative mixed martial artist who will throw spinning attacks, who will hunt for ground and pound on the floor, who can pull off a vicious armbar if he gets to you into the full guard. I mean, this guy has spinning elbow wins over Dustin Stoltzfus that we see on display here, and highlight material that you'll want to watch all day. In this rematch, RoboCop is looking for that revenge. He thinks that he's become a much better fighter since they last fought 3 years ago. But man, Ferreira is always dangerous. Even if you think the technical guy can outpoint him, Ferreira will be live for every single moment of this fight, and I cannot wait for him to rematch on Saturday night.
That is the first fight of the night on the main card. Again, you can see it on CBS and, of course, on Paramount Plus. BC, let's go to the second one here. Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson. Two veteran fighters. Very few fighters deliver the action like Drew Dober, but it is Johnson who is the slight, and I mean just the slightest favorite in this fight.
Well, look, it's been a surprising run for the veteran Michael Johnson, a fighter who we always laud for always being game, but consistently logging losses against elite opponents. Yes, he could always hang his hat on the idea that he knocked out Dustin Poirier in the first round with one punch all those years ago. But at age 39, we're quietly going through a Michael Johnson renaissance at the moment. This is a fighter, by the way, who's got 43 pro fights, yet he has won four of his last five overall, 3 in a row, scored a knockout in that mix, and he suddenly borderline viable again. And what I love about this matchup is you've got a Drew Dober who's either going to knock you out or get knocked out in his biggest fights, is going to bring that same hunger, that same mentality in here. Dober had a win in his last fight, which stopped a losing streak. But what is at stake here? What are the odds? You throw all of that out the window. You're going to be entertained. Both of these warriors are going to go for broke and swing for the fences. And it comes down ultimately, do you like that quick, straight left, one-punch style of Michael Johnson, or do you like the combinations and flurries of what Drew Dober brings to the table? Either way, we're getting action-packed entertainment. I might be slightly leaning here to the underdog Dober to regain some momentum, but the fact that Michael Johnson is pushing 40 and can actually say he's won 4 of his last 5 after such a long and decorated career where he's constantly taken on the best and constantly taken whatever fight was called into him, right? He fights all the time. This is really a testament to his longevity and his willingness to get in there. So this one should be fun. Neither of these guys are knocking on a title shot, but the idea of one of them scoring a resounding stoppage is very much in play.
Let's go from some veterans to, I guess we can call him a newbie, even though he's in about his 5th UFC fight here. Daniel, the next one, Raul Rojas Jr., 21 years old. His biggest stage yet, his toughest opponent yet. Can he actually get it done, though?
BC did it first, so I got to follow up. Chee-wee-wees! Raul Rosas is fighting, baby. And yes, Amanda, this is a huge test for him. It's a big clash of styles, too, because we know Rosas is the pressure grappler. He wants to wrestle. He wants to get you to the floor and hunt submissions. But he's taken on a veteran boxer here in Rob Font, who's faced a high level of competition. Now, the problem for Font is that he struggled on the ground. He's been held down. He's been out-wrestled. He's been submitted before. And Rosas is a fiery guy, man. He's going to be coming in, throwing overhand shots, looking to close that distance and tangle up with him right away. But if he's unable to do so, Rob Font has one of the best jabs in MMA, a weapon that boxers have been pleading with MMA fighters to add into their game. Font's got that. His jab is sharp. It can potentially keep the distance and help him control the range. And if he's able to make this a boxing fight, Raul Rosas might turn from a -200 favorite to a +1,000 underdog real quick. Whichever way this fight goes, it could be one-way traffic. And I'm really excited to see if Font can make the young kid answer some questions and give him a gatekeeper's test, while Rosas is going to really put it on him and see if the veteran still got anything left in the tank, which he may very well, after proving against Gene Matsumoto, very high-level prospect, that his grappling defense is improving. So I like the stylistic clash, and I like the matchup from UFC matchmakers here.
All of them have done a phenomenal job. I mean, shout out to the UFC matchmakers just on what they've done so far in 2026. All right, BC, you get the co-main event here, a top 8 matchup between middleweights. We get Caio Borralho and RDR. And look, Caio coming off his first loss in more than 10 years. That one stings. And both these guys, though, are looking for redemption.
They certainly are, both with love of victory that would put them back into legitimate title contention and avoiding consecutive losses. The question here for me comes down to Reinier de Ridder. Look, let's be honest, he kind of fought over his head of what our expectations were when he came to the UFC with that 6'4" frame at middleweight, the awkward long striking style in which he darts in with big knees and looping punches, and yes, the calling card of his lights out submission game on the ground. But RDR takes a lot of chances to be able to get into those situations, and he also takes damage in doing that. And he certainly had a humbling moment when he lost to Brendan Allen last year as a late replacement for the Fluffy Hernandez fight, and de Ridder was not able to get up off of his stool after round 4. But the problems he's facing here is that Caio Borralho is just a better, well-rounded fighter. And the thing about Caio is he doesn't put himself in bad spots. So you're going to have to see de Ridder, to get the fight to the positions in which he can have the most success, is going to have to take more chances than usual, because from the southpaw stance, Caio Borralho is a smart, technical striker. He has great footwork to be able to hop in and out. He doesn't stay long in range. He's got 76% takedown defense, and he's also got some of the best significant strike accuracy from the outside. So if he can keep this fight off the ground, Borralho's chances of winning go up exponentially, where de Ridder's going to have to really work the unorthodox nature of his game. Should de Ridder be able to consistently take him down? Yes, we are looking at a different type of potential fight. But at the same time, Bohalio is a trained grappler. Jiu-jitsu and judo are his base. He's added the striking over the years. Look, all you have to look at is the level of competition in their last fight and how they performed. Kyle was much more competitive against a streaking Nasruddin Imavov. I like him to win this by decision here, but you never know with RDR. He is that wild card, and that's why he's always going to have that grappler's chance.
Fantastic co-main event. BC, you're done tapping out in the 4th round. I'm not going to say you lost this one because you did do one more segment than Danny. We're hanging on to Danny. Again, taking a look at the main card coming up this Saturday, all starting at 9 Eastern on Paramount Plus. Again, for a little bit, the beginning, you can see on CBS an absolutely phenomenal card with the BMF belt on the line at the very top. Welcome back. We have previewed the entire UFC main card, but it's time to try to make a little money on it. Let's roll through these. Danny, your best bet for the main event?
I got to go with Max Holloway on the money line. I feel like minus 225 is value, and really it's just the point he is in his career right now. He's evolved his game, no longer relying on that heavy pressure style. He can fight on the outside and let an aggressive guy like Charles Oliveira come to him, play the matador to the bull. Those spin kicks have been working, the counter punching, and the newfound power filled out at 155. I think it's going to be a problem for Oliveira, especially if he can't force grappling in this fight. So I expect Holloway to use that beautiful footwork, use his new outside game, use that newfound power, and find a knockout win over Oliveira. But at minus 225, I'll just play it on the money line.
I'll say that he is also 11-2 in his UFC main event, so a great record there. Okay, main card, when you're looking at the entire thing, your best bet for that?
How about Michael the Menace Johnson making a career resurgence right now, minus 120? I like him to beat Drew Dober. Drew Dober might be a couple years younger than him, but he feels like he's 60 plus in fight years. I mean, the guy's been in a career full of wars. And in his last fight, he got a nasty knockout win with some elbows and knees over Kyle Prepolek. But Dober took a lot of damage, this time from a UFC newcomer. Johnson's a guy that's got wins over Edson Barboza, Dustin Poirier. Yeah, those were a long time ago. But he's got that crispy southpaw boxing that seems to be still very sharp. The cardio, the footwork is there. I like the veteran Johnson to get this one done.
If anybody's watching this, I highly encourage you to watch the prelims because those guys are trying to make a statement. They're phenomenal fights. Your best bet of the prelims.
Oh, man. I mean, how about Cody No Love Garbrandt? This guy is an underdog again, and I'm forced to back him maybe out of a little bit of bias because I backed him in his last 2 fights as an underdog as well. So, hey, if it comes up snake eyes, so be it. I won't be betting Cody No Love anymore. But this is the lowest level opponent he's faced in a long time. No disrespect to Long Shao, a guy that's going to bring the fight to him. Dirty boxing, pressure, cardio is there. But I think Garbrandt's just clearly the more skilled fighter, the boxing, the footwork, and his ability to go to the wrestling, too. If he can't win this one, we're done betting Cody. So give me him as an underdog here, Amanda.
Don't upset him. Finally, Danny, put it all together. What about a parlay?
Oh, man, moneyline parlay. We got to put a few of these together. And we're going to go with Jung Young Lee, the Korean Tiger. I think he's got a good matchup, bounce-back matchup to get back in the win column. Sumadarji facing Jesus Aguilar. If he keeps the fight off the floor, Sumadarji's the way better striker. And we'll finish it out with Kyle Bohalio in the co-main event. If you can neutralize De Ritter's grappling threats, he can outstrike him on the feet. I like Bohalio to close out this parlay for plus 154.
I will say also this card might have the best nicknames of any card that I've seen so far. Danny, we appreciate you joining us for the past hour. Have a great rest of your week as we get ready for this UFC 326 Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. Yes, it is a rematch, 11 years in the making, but the BMF belt is on the line Saturday, 9 Eastern, Paramount Plus.